I was a graduate student here at the University of Kansas. Lived here for several years and know some of you. Have had the pleasure of fellowshipping with some of you in the past. And it's good to be back. I'm going to talk to you about spiritual warfare. Can I have the first slide? Some of you know, because I was through here last September with my mom, that I had planned to go to India, and I did. I went to India in November and was in India for almost 3 months, which is a long time. One of the fellows I was with at the end of my stay in Delhi, which was early in my trip, said, you can go home now if you really think you need to. But I was prepared to stay there for 3 months, and I'm glad that I did. What I want to talk to you today about as I talk to you about India is spiritual warfare. India is a nation which is a spiritual stronghold of Satan. And it's an area where there is a great need for prayer. And so I want to share with you a few things. I'd ask you, if you have a piece of paper, take out a piece of paper and just take a few notes of things that you see that you might be willing to pray for, and then take it home and put it in a place where you'll see it frequently. And just make it a point to pray just 2 or 3 minutes a day for these things in India. Prayer is such a powerful tool that we have to show our acceptance of God's programs and God's plans. Ephesians 6:12, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this passage, tells me that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. I want to talk to you about spiritual warfare in the Himalayas. This is a map that is circulated by... Hello? I'll put it in my pocket. And every red dot on this map represents 10,000 people who are unreached by the gospel. Does India stand out? I hope you know where India is. This is India right here. India is mostly in the 1040 window, and it's a very, very unreached area of the world. And I believe that one of the reasons it is so unreached is that when God confounded the languages at the Tower of Babel in Genesis 10 and 11, that there was a group of men who retreated to the Himalayas because they were the highest place on earth at that time. And they made a pact with Satan, and that pact was very strong, and it influenced the creation of the caste system, it influenced the Hindu religion, it influenced the spiritual oppression which has persisted in India for probably 6,000 years. The latest Barna Group survey suggests that 80% of the people in the United States are Christians. That's down from 95% a few years ago. Only 2.3% of the people in India are Christians. That amounts to about 30 million people. That's about 1/10 of the population of the United States. There's 1.2 billion people in India, and almost 1 billion of those people are Hindus. Islam is a prominent presence, has a prominent presence in India ever since the Mughals went in the 1100s and eventually ruled all of India, the Mughal Empire. And so there's a persistence. Even though many Muslims left during the partition of India in 47, many who were property owners stayed behind, and so there's still a large Muslim presence in India. represents almost half the population of the United States. This shows you the distribution of Christians in India. Most of the Christians are down here in Kerala, with the exception of up here in the tribal areas. And although there's a higher percentage of Christians here, this is a very sparsely populated area. And the reason that there's such a high concentration of Christians here is because if a tribal chieftain accepts Jesus, then usually the whole tribe follows suit. And so statistically, the percentages are high here, but the numbers are highest down here. And the tradition says that in the Old Testament that people came from India to pay homage to Solomon in 1000 BC. There have been synagogues along the coast. The oldest one was there when Vasco da Gama came in the 1500s and still exists to this day. I visited it when I was there. Just an aside, my trip started in Delhi. I went all the way up here to the foothills of the Himalayas, and then I traveled all the way back to Delhi, into central India, down to here, all the way down to here, and then I went back to Bombay, and then I went down into Bangalore, and then down and ended up in Kerala. So tradition says that St. Thomas went to Kerala in 52 AD, and he was there for a number of years, and eventually he worked his way across India to the eastern coast to a place called Madras, today called Chennai, and he was martyred there, and there's a monument there to his martyrdom. He was martyred supposedly in sometime around 85 to 87 AD. So one of the things I want to point out is the sparse numbers of Christians in the north, which is predominantly Hindu-speaking. Every state in India has its own language, and they speak Malayalam and Tamil and Kannada and Telugu in the southern states. And English is primarily their second language. Although they have to learn Hindi in school, they don't master it, and their second language is English, because English is the lingua franca. These people are more educated, in addition to having a higher percentage of Christians. But the northern states, their secondary language and really their primary language is Hindi. And that, along with that goes a higher concentration of Hindus. And in fact, in most of these areas, the number of Christians is less than 1 in 1,000. And sometimes 1 in 10,000. So this is an area that is a real stronghold. And the Himalayas come right across here. This is Nepal, this incursion into northern India. This is the state of Andhra Pradesh, which just means upper state. This is the state of Bihar. Together, these two states are smaller than the state of California, but they contain 310 million people. That's the population of the United States. So India is very densely populated. And in the areas where it's most densely populated, you have the highest concentration of Hindus and the lowest concentration of Christians. And so there's a great need. This shows you areas that, by definition, are unreached and unengaged. The purple are Hindu, the green are Muslim. Small ones are 100,000, the large ones are 10 million. There are 4,300 people groups in India. Ethnographers believe there are about 16,000 people groups in the world. So about 1/4 of the people groups in the world exist in India. India has 430 unique languages, and the Bible is being translated into some. William Carey translated the Bible into 44 of those languages. Some were Dravidian from the south, some were Sanskrit-based from the north. Excuse me. Because we have a limit of time, I'm not going to dwell much on these, but we all know that we're told to go, we're told to be stewards, we're told to focus. We have the Great Commission in Matthew. It's restated in the book of Acts, where we're told to go to nearby places and places that are surrounding nearby places, and then we're to go to the othermost parts of the earth, spreading the gospel. We're told that we're to work with all of our heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. We're told that if we sow sparingly, we will reap sparingly. And I choose to call this focus on eternity. Most of us are only going to live for 70 years, maybe a little bit longer in the United States in this day and age. Most of us are not Christians for 70 years. How long do you think eternity is compared to 70 years? We're going to spend eternity, as it says in John 17, getting to know our Lord Jesus. The more time we spend on this side, the better prepared we will be when we enter the kingdom of God. Not spiritually, but physically. And this just tells us that we're all going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. We won't stand before the great white throne because we won't be judged. And we see in Corinthians 10 that we will receive rewards. And if we haven't done anything for Christ, that is, if we haven't focused our energies and our attention on doing things for Christ, the things that we've done will be consumed as by fire, and they won't last. So I just encourage you not to get so caught up in the world we live in, because we're physical beings and our senses are so important to us, but to focus on the spiritual, and I'll be talking more to you about that in the next hour. The faces of India. This fellow is a sadhu. Indians go through 4 stages in their life, particularly males. They start out as children, they become householders, they get married, they raise a family. When they've paid their daughters' dowries and their sons have moved on, they then are free, and they can go into the last stage if they choose, and that's the stage of renunciation. They become renunciants. And this fellow is a sadhu. He's a wise man, and he doesn't do anything except worship and encourage people to worship his God. And this is Hanuman. He's the god of warriors. He's also the god of bachelors. If men want to remain bachelors and they don't want to be tied down by a spouse, they often go and pray to Hanuman, hoping that he will keep those clinging women away from him. This fellow is one stage beyond a sadhu. Can you see him here? He looks gray. He's covered with human ashes. He doesn't cut his hair. His hair are filled with human ashes. He's called a Baba, which means the wisest of the wise men. He is not only a renunciant, but he stays mostly in the north. Every 3 years, they have a celebration in India called Kumbh Mela. Starts out in Haridwar on the Ganges, which flows out of the Himalayas, one of the 3 holy rivers that come together in the confluence in Allahabad, where the ceremony is consummated at the end of the 12-year period. How many people do you think get together for the ceremony of Kumbh Mela? 50,000? 100,000? Any idea? It's the largest celebration on earth, and the record is 100 million people. That's 1/3 of the population of the United States. That's everyone who lives in the United States in the original 13 colonies, gathered together in one location during a period of about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, usually there are only 60 or 70 million people that make it, about 5% of the people in India, but there have been as many as 100 million. So what this guy does in Kumbh Mela is he, on the auspicious date, he takes off all his clothes and he goes down and he bathes in the Ganges. And then he comes back and he sits here with all his little shrines, and people come and worship him, and they give offerings to him, usually money, and then he blesses them and absolves them of their sins. What did Solomon say? There's nothing new under the sun. Another face of India. Can you see this? These are two cobras. Cobras are common in India, particularly in northern Hindu India. Hindu temples are everywhere. There are 330 million gods that are worshipped in India. That's one god for every 4 people. There's a story told about a fellow who left southern India and he went to northern India as a job transfer. And he got there and he didn't like the food they were serving, so at his first opportunity he went back home, and he was from the south, and so he took with him when he went back to northern India a mortar and pestle to grind wheat. And it was fairly large. The bowl was about this big and the pestle was about this, maybe 3 times this size. And he got off the train in northern India and he had to go to the bathroom, and he set it on the ground outside the head, went inside, and when he came back out, there was a crowd of people surrounding it, and they were worshiping his mortar and pestle. And I won't tell you why. Okay, so this is a temple. Temples are everywhere. This is outside of the temple Tirumalu in Tirupati, in the very southern part of India, on the east side, in the state of Andhra Pradesh. This is showing them how they're supposed to prostrate themselves, and they go by and they take some of this substance and they put it on their forehead and as part of the ceremony of worship. Judaism is very prescriptive. God, through Moses, told the Jews that he was the only God they should worship. He told them that they should worship him and him alone. He told them what day of the week they had to worship. He prescribed in detail how they should worship. Hinduism is the exact opposite of Judaism. No prescription. Hindus can worship anyone they want, anytime they want, anywhere they want. And that's one of the things that attracts them to it, is there's total freedom, no constraints. Tirumalu is up on the top of a hill. People walk barefooted for 200 and 300 kilometers to come to Tirumalu to worship Lord Venkateshwara, who is one of the 10 incarnations of Vishnu. The Indians, because Satan is so wily, have their unholy trinity. They have Brahma, who is like God, who has our God, God the Father, who has no form. Vishnu is like Jesus. He has incarnations, only he has 10. He's not limited to just one. And then they have another god called Shiva, who's the god of warriors. And Lord Venkateshwara is one of the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, and there's a little shrine to him up on the top of this hill. Who knows what the most visited places in the United States are? Any ideas? They're pretty far from you guys. One is the Smokies and one is Yosemite. Together they have over 40 million visits a year. That's less than the number of people that come to Tirumalu to worship Lord Venkateshwara. These fellows are called Ayyappa, and they're worshiping one another. I don't know if you can see in detail. There are a couple that are down on their hands and knees here. I was on my way to a mission hospital, and we stopped to get gas, and the fellow I was riding with pointed out, he said, "Look at those fellows. They've been to Sabrimala. They've become gods, and now they're worshiping one another. They've bypassed the householder stage, and they are going to become priests or monks for Ayyappa. And they will go back to their local villages, and people will come and they will draw them to worship of Ayyappa." This is the Taj Mahal. Everyone, I think, probably has seen the Taj Mahal. You can't go to India without going to the Taj Mahal, one of the 7 wonders of the Western world. This fellow is a Buddhist monk, but he's at the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal was built to honor Shah Jahan's wife, who bore him 14 children in 20 years. He was very proud of her. He was a Muslim, and she was a Muslim. The darkness of India. I told you that the darkness of India starts in the Himalayas, this high place. The holy rivers are fed by glaciers, and they flow out of the Himalayas. And I told you a little bit about Kumbh Mela, which is part of Hindutva. Hindutva is the base of the Hindu religion. Hindu religion permeates all of a Hindu's life. Everything they do is centered in Hinduism. And so it's very hard for them to walk away from their gods because it means changing their entire life. And since in some areas only 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 are Christians, they are divorced from family, they are divorced from friends, they are divorced from business contacts, they are rejected. And so the only people who are very attracted to Christianity are the Dalits. You know them, I'm sure, as untouchables, the very bottom of the Indian caste system. They have no hope except for thousands of incarnations in an attempt to get back to the top. Backwardness of India. The Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal. When Thomas Jefferson penned that, it said all men were sacred because they were created in the image of God. Jefferson, although he was a deist, believed in many of the principles in the Bible. Indians don't believe this. Hindus believe that all men are created unequal. And if you're a Dalit because that's where Brahma wants you. And it is now your responsibility to work your way up through many incarnations to achieve a reunion with Brahma at some point in the future, millions after millions of years. And it's no one else's responsibility to help you with your karma as you work your way back to union with Brahma. A lot of demon possession in India, a lot of corruption in India. They think that India is a democracy. The British were parliamentarians and they ruled India as a democracy, and when they left in 1947, India took over the running of the country in parliamentary form, but it's an illusion. They really don't have very many freedoms, and especially the people at the bottom of the heap. And so one of the things they're preoccupied with is preservation. Reminds me very much of the effort that was put forth by the high priests and the priestly class and the Pharisees in maintaining their power structure during the time of our Lord Jesus. The thing is that when Christianity left the Middle East and went into Russia and Europe and Africa and all the places that it went, it transformed people. Greeks today don't have a Greek mythology. It's just a part of their history. Romans don't have. They were pagans, but they don't have a mythology. Even the Vikings, who were steeped in Norse mythology, don't practice their mythology today. But the Indians are so backward, they still are involved in a mythology that was created at least 5,000 years ago. Great needs for prayer. This fellow started a Bible college in the Himalaya, at the foothills of the Himalayas 25 years ago, and they trained many young students, but most of the students that come there are from rich families because they can afford it, and they don't have a heart for going into the villages and preaching the gospel. I met a young fellow when I was in Missouri at 7,000 feet, and he was staying with his adoptive father, who was a missionary, been in India his entire life, although he was of adoptive Dutch parentage. His adoptive parents and grandparents had been in India for over 100 years, and so they were a very faithful family. And this fellow had just finished training in Bangalore at India's most prestigious Christian Bible school. And I said, why don't you come to Herbertpur with me? There's a Christian psychiatrist that you can work with, and you can get some real exposure to sharing the gospel with the people of India. And he said, no, I'm waiting for a job in a nice church in a nice, larger city. He wanted the cushy life. So here's a need for prayer. Pray that the students that go to this Bible college will have a heart for spreading the gospel, and they won't just be looking for cushy jobs. This is just a painting to show you the college. And this is Wycliffe, India. Many of you, I told you there are 400 languages in India. Everyone who works with Wycliffe Bible translators must go through this place. There's another need in India. These fellows are lepers, and they've been put in a leper colony, and these are their children. Their children don't have leprosy, but because they've been put in the leper colony with their parents, they have no hope. No hope for education, no hope for getting ahead, and they will continue to be untouchables. But there are people that start children's homes, and they adopt these children, and they keep them close by so they can see their parents occasionally, and so that's an area for a need for prayer. One of the mechanisms of spreading the gospel is to go into slum villages. Usually they're around big cities. Because these people have come from other states, they have no entitlement to education. And so Christians go in and they hire teachers and they use Christian teaching material and they teach these children for free, and the children become Christians and they share the gospel with their parents and their parents become Christians, and it's a very powerful method for spreading the gospel in areas that are otherwise impenetrable. This fellow has been following the Lord for 30 years, his wife for only about 15 years. Her name is Ram Saki, which means snake worshiper. And they used to live in this little hut here with this dung roof, and it had no front door. And one night a cobra crawled in, got in bed with their 7-year-old son and bit him, and he died shortly after, and she forsook worshiping snakes. Their daughter wants to be a nurse. If she becomes a nurse, the family income will increase 100-fold when she goes back home after nursing school to live with them. This little baptism we had on the banks of this lake, we baptized 30 people. I was told that probably wasn't a very good idea. Baptism by a Christian of an Indian is a jailable offense. It's a non-bondable jailable offense. So had they caught me, they probably would have taken me to the airport, put me on the plane, and said, you'll never get a visa again. You're never coming back to India. But they were looking forward, and they wanted the Westerners to baptize. This fellow is a pharmacist from Detroit, a friend. He's a brother-in-law of a friend of mine in Nashville. This young lady was a pathologist. For those of you who know me, I'm a pathologist. Or I should say those of you who don't know me. And I recently retired after a career of 35 years practicing pathology. And so I went to this Christian hospital, 50-bed hospital in the foothills of the Himalayas to see if I could help with them. And while I was there, I got to tour the hospital, and this is their main medical surgical ward. A little bit more advanced than most of our surgical wards, isn't it? And this fellow I worked with was a psychiatrist, and his wife is a nurse. His wife read Gladys Aylward's biography when she was in nursing school, about to finish nursing school. And she told her mother, I am going to India and I'm never coming home. She's been in India for about 8 years now, and she's married to this Christian psychiatrist. And they've adopted this young girl who was Nepali. Parents sold her into slavery. She was being sexually abused by the people who bought her. She started hearing voices telling her to kill herself. She poured gasoline on herself. You can see the scars, and tried to burn herself to death. And they've rescued her, and she now works with Raja in his mental health clinic in this little small rural hospital. This fellow is the son of the fellow of the missionary I stayed with in Missouri. So he's a fourth-generation Indian missionary, 40 years old. and has lived in India all his life except for 4 years when he went to Taylor University in Indiana. And his wife is an internist from East India near Bengal, near Calcutta. And together they have a 50-bed hospital and an AIDS ministry. And the Indian government provides them with AIDS therapy medications. And people come and they share the gospel with them, they pray with them, and over a period of time, some people accept the Lord. This is a hospital in the south where they have a cardiac center. This is a ministry that I have become involved with called Shishi Ashram, means discipling place. Ashram is a place where gurus establish a presence and people come to learn of the wisdom they have. And so a fellow that I've become acquainted with, lives in Dubai, is a native Hindi speaker, grew up in central India in Madhya Pradesh, and he has translated all of these documents, tracts, discipling brochures. He's a talented musician. He's written songbooks. His uncle was M.E. Cherian, who's one of the best-known assembly songwriters from southern India, and he's translated some of his songs into Hindi. They make CDs and distribute them. And these two fellows have come from Uttar Pradesh in the north, that state I showed you that has 180 million people. They've ridden the bus for about 5 hours to get some of these materials to take back to their little village. They also are involved in Bible distribution. These are just two more fellows. This fellow's name is Kyriakos, which comes from Kyriakos, showing his Greek heritage. This fellow works with the Indian Mission Association. This fellow is an NGO involved in human rights. He was in the mid-level leadership with India for many years, and I could tell you many more stories, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to go right to the end and say that India needs prayer. So I'd encourage you, as Christ told us, that we're to pray for God's will. Pray that God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Pray identifying with the people that you're praying for. The book of James tells us Daniel is one of the most righteous men who has ever lived on the face of the earth. And yet in Daniel chapter 9, when Daniel prays for the Israelites as they're about ready to come to the end of their 70-year captivity, 25 times he identifies with his brethren. And then pray with anticipation. In Habakkuk chapter 2, it says that Habakkuk told God that he would anticipate God's answer to his prayer. You remember the story of Habakkuk? He said, God, you need to discipline my brothers. They're unjust. They're evil. God said, okay, I'll send the Babylonians. And Habakkuk said, what? They're worse than we are. How can you send the Babylonians to discipline us? And God said, you wait and see. And so Habakkuk prayed with anticipation. He went to his prayer tower and he waited to see. Now, God didn't answer in Habakkuk's time. He didn't take them off into captivity for another 120 years. But our God is faithful. He keeps his promises. He does what he says he's going to do. We were talking the other night about Tyre. God said in many places in the prophets that he was going to destroy Tyre. And when Nebuchadnezzar went to Tyre off the coast of Lebanon, he besieged Tyre for years, and then he finally gave up. And people thought, oh, God doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's saying. Tyre is a stronghold that cannot be conquered. What finally happened to Tyre? Alexander built a causeway to the island off the coast of Lebanon, and he destroyed Tyre. Tyre went out of existence in 320 BC. There's a city called Tyre, but it's on the coast. It's not the little island. So God's word is true. It may take a while, but we need to pray with anticipation. Our God is a God who keeps his promises. So I've given you some things to pray for. I've asked you to make a list of these things. And so I would encourage you, as you think of India and you look at this little piece of paper and you see these things that have been shared with you, that you just take a couple of minutes and you pray that God's will be done in India as it is in heaven. Thank you.